Welcome to the Veterinary Marketing Podcast, where it's all about how to attract, engage, and retain clients to your veterinary hospital using digital marketing. My name is Brandon Brashears. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen today. In today's episode, we have a special guest. We have Sarah Rumple from rumpuswriting.com. We talk about copywriting and all things copywriting. And this is incredibly important to the success of your practice. If you want to stand out and attract the right kinds of clients, which I'm assuming you do, otherwise you wouldn't be listening. So before we begin today, we have just two sponsors, and here they are. This episode is being sponsored by the International Veterinary Dentistry Institute and veterinarydentistry.net. If you're a veterinarian or you have veterinarians that you work with who struggle with dentistry or who'd like to be more confident when it comes to dental procedures, then you definitely should go to ivdi.org/VMP. That is ivdi.org/VMP to sign up for a free upcoming live training that's going to go far beyond your average dentistry seminar. This is the gateway to the Veterinary Dental Practitioner Program, an intensive masterclass program that is a comprehensive initiative designed to enrich veterinary associate skills while empowering practice managers, practice owners to take their practice to new heights. This live training is going to be conducted by board-certified veterinary dentist Dr. Brett Beckman. He's been on the podcast twice and is an incredibly talented teacher and educator. He's going to dive deep into actual cases. He's going to dissect all the vital components of effective dentistry case management. And this is going to give you some really direct insight and a clear blueprint to improve your prowess in veterinary dentistry. So if you're ready to elevate your practice and your professional skills, simply go to ivdi.org/VMP. This is going to be the golden opportunity that helps you to make a significant impact in your practice. It's going to help to give your patients and your clients better care. And it's also going to improve the personal professional development that you have in your career. Go to ivdi.org/VMP. This episode is being sponsored by two websites by Brad Haven. We have usedvetequipment.com and newvetequipment.com. For over 9 years now, usedvetequipment.com has been helping vets to buy and sell used equipment. You can save money when you buy used everything from cages, kennels, pumps, x-ray equipment, lasers, ultrasounds, dental equipment, surgery equipment, lab equipment from Abaxis, IDEX, and Heska, tables, tubs, and sinks, vet trucks, and vet boxes. What do you have to sell? At usedvetequipment.com, they bring the buyer and seller together. Also, if you're looking for new veterinary equipment with amazing warranties, check out newvetequipment.com, where they show you the price up front. They have digital x-ray equipment, dental x-ray equipment, ultrasound equipment, LED surgery lighting, surgery tables, autoclaves. When you go to newvetequipment.com, you'll clearly see the price on every single item for sale, and you'll also know what the warranty is so that you can buy without regret. All right, so I mentioned we have Sarah Rumple, who's the owner and chief creative officer over at rumpuswriting.com. Now, I've been following them for a long time, so I was really excited that Sarah agreed to come on the podcast and talk about copywriting. We dive into all kinds of, I think, very important topics around copywriting, creating a brand voice, brand identity, and things like that when it comes to writing, because most veterinarians are technically pretty good writers. The problem comes that they have a hard time of communicating their brand effectively. And not only that, but how do they sell and not feel salesy? And there's just a bunch of things when it comes to creating copy that's going to convert or achieve what you want it to achieve. So this is a really good episode for everybody. Be sure to listen all the way through and head on over to rumpuswriting.com so that you can reach out to Sarah and have her and her team help out with your content, because I think it would be an incredibly beneficial investment. So if you have any questions, comments, need help with anything, don't hesitate to reach out. But without further ado, here's my interview with Sarah. Thank you so much, Sarah, for coming on my podcast. I'm so excited to finally have you on. I've been wanting to connect with you and have you on for a long time. I've been seeing your content from you and your team, and so I'm excited to have you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brandon.
So tell me, how did you get into the veterinary industry? And how did you start with writing and copywriting?
Yeah, it was kind of by accident. My first grown-up job was as a respiratory therapist in human medicine, and I got into sales that way. and got married and was pregnant with my son and wanted to split my sales territory in half so that I could work part-time. And my company wasn't really down with that. So I decided, well, I'm just going to go back to school when my son is born. So I went back to school, got another degree in communication. And while I was in school, one of my professors asked if I had ever thought about being a writer, because she thought I was a really good writer. And I had never really thought of it being a viable career option before. I always thought of writers as this like romantic thing, like they write novels or they work for the New York Times. And I hadn't really thought of all the other possibilities in writing. But her comment made me apply for an internship at a magazine here in Denver. And I got the internship and I was published for the first time. And I just knew that that's what I was meant to be doing. And then after my internship ended, I needed to find a real job that paid money. So the American Animal Hospital Association was hiring a marketing copywriter, and I applied for it and I got it. And so that was in 2011. I had never worked in veterinary practice before. I'm not a veterinarian or a technician or any of that. So it was my introduction to vet med, really, other than just my own experiences with my pets. But I was bitten by the vet med bug at that point, and I've never been able to leave the profession since.
That's really cool. There's a lot of things that I think is cool about that. First, I like that you have a sales background, because I think that is such an undervalued skill, especially when it comes to copywriting. And so that's really cool. I want to talk to you about that in a little bit. But what do you think the main difference is between copywriting and just writing? And like when you think about copywriting, maybe people don't know what that means. And so what do you feel like that is?
Yeah. So, copywriting, I think in simple terms, is really just writing for marketing copy or promotional materials is typically what a copywriter does. And so that's obviously different than writing editorial or novel or something of that sort. My company does copywriting in addition to editorials and book writing and all of that. So we kind of do both, but copywriting is definitely the bulk of our business and what keeps us busy.
Definitely. That's really cool. So when you are hired by a client, I guess, what do you think are the main things that you try to achieve for them? And then how do you think that differs from their approach that they take? Because I'd be interested to see what you think about that. Because I have a lot of opinions. People don't ask me to do copywriting for them because I'm not good at the copywriting, I would say. But I would love to get your take on that.
Yeah, it really depends on the client's objectives, right? If some clients will hire us to write website copy, and some will hire us to write blog posts or social media copy, or print materials like brochures, emails, advertisements, video scripts. So it really depends on what they're looking for. But I think it's important that when someone hires a copywriter, well, first of all, I think it's important that they hire a copywriter if they aren't one. A lot of people, we work with like some of the smartest people in the world.
Absolutely.
And, these people are brilliant, but just because you're brilliant, that doesn't mean that you are a good writer or a good copywriter. So that's number one, I guess. But then, yeah, I guess we sit down with them and we figure out, what are they trying to achieve? Are they trying to get more people on their email list? Are they trying to get more social followers? Are they trying to get more appointments in their books, reach more people in the industry? We have a lot of industry clients that want to promote their pharmaceutical or their, diagnostics or something like that. So
Yeah.
we determine what they're looking for and what their tone and voice is, and then go from there.
Definitely. So I think that I think most veterinarians are probably like generally excellent writers when it comes to like writing papers, right? Because they've been through so much schooling, so they have a lot of practice at that. But I think when it comes to producing content that's trying to connect with either content or promotional materials, I think there's just such a big gap between like communicating well and just like saying something. And like one of the things is most hospitals could probably just interchange each other's copy, and you would like not really have any way of knowing who wrote what, generally speaking. So I think actually every hospital needs a copywriter, just because if you want to be unique and stand out, I think it's incredibly important.
For sure. When you were talking with Seth Godin, I listened to your Seth Godin podcast, and he said something about how if he were a veterinarian, he would only have one page of a website, and it would just have his contact information and his, phone number, and say, call me, I'll answer the phone. And I love Seth Godin to death. But I disagree with that. I think, especially in today's market, when millennials are the largest pet owning population, they want more tech savvy businesses to work with. They want to take their pet to a veterinarian that has a great website, and a veterinarian that understands how to text them appointment reminders and things like that. So I think that a good website is kind of your first window, the first interaction that you have with some of these potential clients, and they should be impressed when they go there. And yeah, you're right. So many veterinary practices, you go to their homepage and it's, we treat pets like family. I mean, that's
Vet Care Reimagined, and these typical taglines that are really just interchangeable, and they don't convey any value or values at all. And I do agree with you. When Seth was talking about that, I think he's just been working and producing for so long that now he's in a place for so long that he just is in demand constantly. So I think you can't imagine a world where you open the door and nobody shows up type of a thing. And I'm sure he knows what that's like, but I think I agree. Having a single page website with not much content would not be, I think, a good way to attract the right clients.
At least not to start out your business, for sure.
Agreed, to start out until you can build your reputation. And I get what he was saying, for sure.
Yeah.
And definitely same thing that when it comes to advertising, right? He doesn't need to advertise, so he doesn't do it. But what are, along those lines, what are some of the things that you think are just things that you continually see that kind of drive you a little bit crazy, that you think veterinarians could be doing better when it comes to copywriting? Or do you think that they should hire copywriters to kind of get an understanding of a better strategy, right? Because you don't necessarily know what you don't know. So what do you think about that?
Well, so just to go back for 1 second about the Seth comment, if your website is terrible, not only is it not attracting the right clients necessarily, but think about, the staffing problem that VetMed has. And if you're a new veterinarian just graduating from vet school and you're looking for a job, and you see a job ad from a veterinary practice and you go to that website and it's awful, what does that tell you about their practice? Are they going to have outdated old equipment too? Are they going to not be embracing the latest, trends and communicating with clients? So I think that's another thing is we shouldn't just be talking about reaching clients in VetMed. We should also be talking about reaching potential team members, technicians and veterinarians as well. And I think it's important to have good content to show that you're credible and that you're a good place to work as well. So that being said,
a really, really good point. I think that's actually incredibly valuable. So very good point. I always forget that because I don't work in practice. And so totally agreed.
Yeah. So I would say some of the biggest mistakes I'm seeing practices doing, and not just practices, but also industry companies, they can all start sounding the same, like we already talked about. They don't really embrace an authentic voice, I think a lot of them are trying to sound professional, which is okay.
Clinical even, and
yes. And that's okay depending on who you're targeting, but usually you're targeting, a pet owner who's probably, not that professional and not wanting to read that dry material. And so, I guess I would tell practices usually when you're trying to think about what is our voice, how should we be writing our copy if they're writing their own copy, I would typically probably tell them how do you want clients and patients to feel when they come into your practice? Do you want them to feel at ease? Do you want them to feel happy? Do you want them to feel like you guys are fun and young and on top of the latest trends? And if those are the ways that you want them to feel when they go into your practice, then you should write your content with that in mind and with that kind of a tone and voice. So that's something that I would definitely tell practices. Some other often common mistakes I see is too wordy. A lot of people, especially non-professional writers, they just they think more is better. In school we were taught, okay, you have to write, a 2-page essay or a 500-word this or that. And you just use all the filler words because you're trying to meet that requirement. And in the professional world now, typically, especially when it comes to marketing copy, you just have to be as succinct as possible. If you can take words out and still say the same thing, do it every single time. So I would say every writer, whether you're a professional writer or not, needs an editor. So even if you're not willing to hire a professional copywriter to help you, I would encourage you to hire a copy editor at a minimum and write your own copy and at least have someone having that second set of eyes on it. I also see a lot of really terrible email subject lines. So I would say email subject lines often are just kind of boring and dry, and email is still a really, really powerful method of communication for companies to use. But I think you have to do it the right way, because our email inboxes are certainly inundated every day with all kinds of promotional emails. And so you have to have a subject line that's really going to grab attention, make someone curious, personalize it. A lot of practices, if you're sending out something promoting some sort of a new dog product or something, maybe a new medication for heartworm that's dog specific or something, make sure that you're segmenting your audience. You're not sending that to your clients who only have cats. Don't send them things that aren't relevant to them. So I think that's something that's important too. And just proofread your stuff, edit your stuff before you send it out. Once you write it, read it again, read it some more, and just make sure you're not sending anything that's got errors or typos, things like that.
Definitely. I need proofreading in my life. I make mistakes all the time, and usually if I create an ad or something and it has a typo, especially if you're targeting veterinarians, they're generally pretty good at finding things. So anyways, if you ever need to edit and proofread, you can just create an ad and then you'll get all the comments about it when you're running it, for sure. But I really liked what you said about email, because email is, I think, hands down the most profitable traffic source that you can have, right? You own it, you can send it out. But I haven't seen any veterinary hospitals use it well. I don't think I've seen any veterinary hospitals use it well. And it's such a need. And I'm every time I get on an email list of clients and things. And it's just like 5 tips for a safe Thanksgiving. And it's like the most boring things ever. And I know the intent is good, but it just doesn't deliver any value. And I think that's a really important thing. So when you work with clients, do you focus, or do you try to focus on, or help the clients to get kind of focused on maybe revenue activities, like starting at the bottom of the funnel so it's going to drive more return? Or do you suggest that they start kind of with the total brand message and then try to get their branding and messaging consistent throughout everything, including like text messages and things like that? Or what's kind of your approach when you start with somebody?
So I would say usually starting kind of from scratch with, okay, what is your tone and voice and your messaging that you want to get across? I think that's the most important thing to start with, for sure. But again, going back to kind of just depends on what the client's objective is. If you're wanting, there's different kinds of marketing copy, right? You have promotional materials that are when you're like promoting a new product or a service or, a special or something like that. It's Dental Health Month. We're offering 20% off this month on dental cleanings. That's an example of like a promotional email or something. I guess it's just really what are they looking for? Do they want to engage deeper with their clients than that? Do they, if that's the case, then it's good to create some more relational copy, something that's going to be of value to the client. So, educational, informational, not just about this promotion we're offering, but hey, this is information that would be relevant to you and your pet, and it's free. Like just look at our blog or check out our e-newsletter or something like that. So
I know that's a big, I guess, wide sweeping question, for sure.
But I guess everything really just depends on what the client's looking for. We have, larger companies that really they have a specific goal in mind, and they want us to help them achieve that. And so we'll work with them accordingly. And then we have, little mom and pop practice that wants, they just want to show up higher on search, and they want, regular content added to their blog. Maybe they want to engage more on social, and we'll help them do those things. I don't usually we don't usually have clients come to us and say, okay, we want a marketing plan. We're really just strictly copywriting, and we definitely will brainstorm and have content planning sessions, but it's usually specific to content. And I always recommend, if you're wanting a very comprehensive marketing plan, there needs to be another player at the table, someone who's a digital marketing typically expert.
Cool. That makes sense. And that's, people always ask if I do social content, and I don't do social content. I think, I like doing ads, and so I stick to ads. I think there's like a lot of wisdom in picking what you're good at and not trying to do everything, because then you'd be a lot more effective.
Sure.
But I guess one thing that I was wondering is, when it comes to content types that you see people producing, like whether it's blog posts or just email content or anything like that, do you think there's an underutilized like medium of content? Like, do you think advertorials or advertorial style content is underused? Or when you're creating content, do you think we should focus more on this one type? What do you kind of see going on right now, and what do you like to do that you think really helps to drive a lot of value for your clients?
So my company, we're writing right now over 200 pet owner facing blog posts every month for veterinary practices across the country. Well, really, and in other countries as well. So I think a lot of practices are understanding the value of having a blog and contributing to it regularly. So I think that, before, people were always like, why do you need a blog? And so we've always kind of tried to talk about the educational, you can push clients there when, their cat's diagnosed with diabetes or something, and you want to send them some information. You can send them to your own blog post rather than, some other article on the internet or some printout that you've made. So, and then obviously the SEO content, just the having that regular contribution to your website and new content being produced is going to help you to move up in search rankings. So, I do think that the industry is starting to understand the value of regular content production. I personally, a lot of the industry clients, the bigger, not practices really, but a lot of the bigger industry clients that we work with are going toward advertorials nowadays. And I think that's fun. I really like that because it's, yes, it's paid content, but, it appears in a publication that's, got a lot of readers, and it's typically not promotional in any way. It's an educational, informational article that, at the end might have, it'll say sponsored by, and at the end might have a easy little call to action or some sort. But I do think that there's a lot of value in that as long as you're working with a publication that is targeting the audience that you want to reach.
Yeah. So I think that veterinary practices really want to produce educational content because they value and believe that education is very important, right? But I think that that's probably not necessarily a good approach to have, generally speaking. Do you think that educational content is a good strategy? I mean, I think producing information for the sake of like educating, there's like, somebody could go read a textbook, right? Mm-hmm. So when somebody says like, I want to create educational content, do you direct them to do something different, or what's your approach on that? I'm just interested to see what you think about that.
I do think there's value in that, just because, if you're a veterinarian, would you rather your client just go Google or find a book or whatever on the topic that they're asking you about, or would you rather do you want to be kind of the source of that information? So I do think there's value. I mean, obviously there's low hanging fruit stuff like, holiday safety. Like, okay, everyone publishes about that kind of stuff at certain times of year, sure, or firework aversion, or, like all those things. But I do think, if you have, it helps to kind of cement you as a credible and gives you kind of that authority. If you have that content on your own site and you've, written it, whether you've actually written it yourself or you've had a copywriter write it. I do think that there is value there. And like I said before, I think there's also SEO value there. So the more good, credible information that we have online, I mean, obviously content's being produced at record rate right now, and it has been for a while, and it will continue to be that way, especially now with things like ChatGPT. And but I think the more credible, good information written by veterinarians and veterinary professionals out there, the better. That way we have that kind of hopefully drowning out the less credible sources. So I think there's value in that. And if someone wants to educate clients, I think it makes sense.
That definitely makes sense. I guess with, I think the way that most of the time that I see people talk about blogging is that they've written something and so then they publish it and then nobody reacts to it. Mm-hmm. And my typical thing is that it is informational, but it's not useful because it's, number one, so boring, and then it's also super clinical, and it just doesn't convey anything beyond just the information, which is like what a Google search or now a ChatGPT search could produce.
Which is why you should stand out by not making it boring and clinical.
And have that voice and everything that you talked about. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And even maybe like, if going back to the diabetes in cats example, if you have a blog about cats, so your cat was diagnosed with diabetes, now what? You could even embed a video of, one of your team members showing how to administer insulin or something, like there are a number of things you can add to it that makes it even more valuable than just words on a page.
Yeah, definitely. I think that if you can show people too, at the same time as telling them and conveying that information, if everything's consistent too, it'll make the content piece so much more effective. So I think that's some really good ideas there. And since you brought up ChatGPT or AI rather, what do you see? Because I think I can spot AI headlines now all the time, and I don't know how you feel about that, but I feel like it's really started to just kind of make content super bland in general, right? And Seth talked about this too. All the mediocre content can be replaced. So I think actually it might do a better job than most veterinarians when it comes to like direct response copywriting, but it's still not very good. So what's your take on AI and things like that?
Yeah. I mean, gosh, it's evolving so quickly, right? I think it was probably just about a year ago when I first heard about ChatGPT, and I was like, oh my gosh, are the robots going to replace me? I don't know. But since then, I've had a lot of time to play around with it. And when Seth was on your podcast, and I've actually heard him say a couple of different times something similar to the fact that AI is not going to replace humans, but humans who use AI effectively are going to replace humans who don't use AI. And I think that makes sense. And so on my team, we've talked about AI a lot. We've practiced using ChatGPT. We never take something ChatGPT writes for us and give that to a client as our own work ever. In fact, sometimes I wonder if ChatGPT would cause me more work than if I just didn't use it. Sometimes it requires a lot of editing for sure at this stage. That could change, but I do think if we've talked about the importance of being authentic with your voice and your tone, and having copy that represents you as a brand and your company and your practice. ChatGPT isn't you, and it's not your brand, and it's not your practice, and so it doesn't know how to convey that, and it can certainly give you a decent starting point if you know how to put in the proper prompts, but it's going to require a lot of work on your end to make it your own and make it authentic and come from you. So I would just say, if you're a practice and you want to play around with it, maybe start with something like job ads or, a handbook, or maybe a simple email copy, or even a simple blog post, but you're going to have to spend time really customizing it to make it look like it's coming from you and not an alien.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you can just copy and paste it in there, it doesn't do the client any benefit, because they should just go to ChatGPT and then can ask follow-up questions. And so if you're not going to provide value, just don't add to the pile of junk on the internet, I think. But in general, I think that's a good kind of philosophy around that. And do you think that it is like, well, I guess in what instances would you rely more on that than not?
I would say it's good for brainstorming. One thing that my team tried was what are 10 different blog post approaches for a blog on heartworm in dogs or something like that. And it came up with 10 different approaches that you could take. Maybe it's ways to prevent heartworm, or, like maybe it's a list, or maybe it's I don't remember all the different things that it came up with, but if you're having writer's block and you want to produce a blog post on this topic today, but you're just not sure how to, if you want to do something that's unique, so you're not sounding like everyone else in the industry, I think it's a good way to kind of brainstorm. And it is smart. Like you can have a conversation with it, like if it comes back with different ideas for you and you don't like any of them, you can ask it to regenerate. You can even say like, change this so that it includes cats as well, or something like that. And it will appropriately respond. So that's pretty interesting way to use it. If you have, I'm actually going to try this later, and this might not apply really to veterinary practices, but I'm working on an editorial piece right now for today's veterinary business, and I have interviews that I've conducted in the transcripts, and I'm going to actually copy and paste the transcript interview into ChatGPT and ask it to pull out the important quotes and pieces of information. And I just because I'm curious to see it's like a 15-page PDF, so I'm curious to see how long it takes it and what it comes up with. Is it going to miss important things that I would have highlighted on my own? So I'm curious about something like that. Like, can you take a large piece of information and have it pull out the important parts for you? I think that's an interesting idea that might be able to save me time in the future. And even a veterinarian, if like a new study comes out and they want to, I mean, obviously there's an abstract or something, but like if there's something they're looking for in a larger piece of information, that might be useful for them.
Absolutely. That's really cool. Yeah, there's a lot of tools that I use now. Like there's one called Opus Clip, which just automatically chunks down your videos into landscapes that you don't have to do any video editing. So that's really cool. And then one is called Pod Squeeze, which I upload my podcast, it transcribes it and gives me all the cool chunks out of it, timestamps and everything. So those are pretty cool. And I'm excited for those kinds of tools. But I do think that you're kind of right on with using it for brainstorming and things. And I've been seeing that it really depends on the prompts that you give it, right? Where if you can have it write stuff in the style of certain famous marketers, or in direct response style, or clickbait style, and just adding those kinds of qualifiers really helps to get different results.
Yeah. And if you already have something written, like let's say you have one of the doctors on your team wrote an email for clients and you think it's too dry or something, you could copy and paste that copy into ChatGPT and say, craft an email for dog owners, based on this copy, but make it sound more friendly and approachable. And ChatGPT generally does a decent job of doing that. I mean, you're still going to have to edit it for your own voice and tone and accuracy sometimes, but I think that it's a good starting point.
I definitely agree. And yeah, it's pretty creative. It's interesting. I was using it yesterday and it seems like something changed on it because I told it that it was going to be helping me as a marketing assistant. And it's like, I told them what the idea was. And then it said, wow, this is a great idea. This is going to help you. And so I think it's fantastic or something like that. And it was just really bizarre because it doesn't usually say that kind of thing. So that kind of caught me off guard. Yeah. So that was pretty weird. But one thing that I have a question for, when you think about like clients that you work with and veterinary hospitals in general, when do you think that they should consider hiring a copywriter like yourself and your team versus when it's not necessarily time for them?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think if you know what you want to say, but you don't have the time or the ability to say it yourself, I think that's a good time to consider hiring a copywriter. If you do want to put out regular content, whether that's, okay, we want to email our clients a newsletter once a month, and we want to have blog posts that feed into that newsletter. We want to have 2 or 3 blog posts a month that feed into that. And we want to have social posts, 5 times a week, or whatever their goals are. If they know that, and they know that, okay, we don't really have the bandwidth on our team to do that, or we don't have someone who is a skilled writer, then it's time to consider that for sure. Like I said before, some of the smartest people in the world are my clients, and they're so smart and they know so much more than I do about everything except for writing. And so that's why we work with them. And like I said earlier before as well, I would say at a minimum, consider hiring a copy editor if you're not really ready to hire a copywriter. I just think having someone polish what you write and making sure that it is consistent and with, in the tone and voice of your brand, I think is really important as well.
Absolutely. Editors make you look like you're a good writer. So one time, I had an editor one time for a piece that I did. I can't remember which magazine it was for, and they made it look so good, and it was amazing. I was like, I didn't write this. It's fantastic. But that's really cool. And I think that probably are you seeing with a lot of your clients that people are seeing slowdowns? Because I work with people with ads, right? And so pretty much the only people I'm talking to are people who are seeing slowdowns. And so it's basically everybody that I'm talking to. So I feel like I might be biased on it. But I think that there is a real slowdown in the economy versus the past 3 years. Mm-hmm. And so, especially with writing and content, I think that there's so much more. It takes like a little bit more time, right? To get traction, to find your voice, to get response and things like that. Because with ads, you can just turn them on, measure it immediately, right? But with content and emails, I think if you just start showing up with emails, you're kind of just like the neighbor who's asking to borrow your truck, or like asking for stuff. So when it comes to content and things, I think that people should start before they're going to need it, because it's something that takes time. What are your thoughts on that? And I think people should get started with their strategy. And like Seth Godin said, he said that is part of running your business. You can't not write emails. Mm-hmm. That is it. Mm-hmm. So do you think, I guess it's hard to make broad sweeping generalizations for every practice, but I think actually email is something that every single practice should be doing, and almost nobody is. I think that actually once a month is not often enough, and I'd like to hear your thoughts about that and what you think about as far as time frames to get response and to get traction and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think definitely you should start before you need it. I don't know if there's a slowdown or if there's just more of a shift. I feel like some of the people I work with are experiencing growth. Some have are kind of steady. I don't really know of anyone who's declining that much, but I do think that there are changes that are happening all the time, and people are deciding where to spend their money. I think lately that's been starting to change. I'm not an economist, but that's the impression I'm getting from the perspective of my business. And like you said, it's, if you're a veterinary practice owner, how much time, you've probably heard smart business people talk about, working for your business versus working in your business, or working in your business versus working on your business. Yeah. And you have to spend a certain amount of time working on your business. Otherwise your business could fail. So it's important, building up a good email list and reaching out to your clients whether it's via text, email, social media, any of those other mediums that we've talked about, I think is really important. That's time spent working on your business and developing those relationships, building that rapport, reminding clients, pet owners who you are and why you're there, and that you're there to help them with anything that their pet needs, and so I think it is important. You should definitely start before, if your business is starting to go downhill, there might be other things you should be thinking about first before, like, oh, we should have a content strategy now. I think content strategy is something you should probably be thinking about while your business is healthy anyway, and just using that to help maintain a healthy business. So I don't know, I really think frequency of email depends on what you're wanting to talk about. I would say true. Don't say, okay, we're going to send emails 5 days a week or 5 times a month or once a week or whatever it is. I don't know that it's so important to have a set frequency as it's important to have, I think you should probably have a minimum frequency that, you say, okay, we're going to reach out at least this often. But if you don't have anything to say, why email?
I agree. That would be my my thought is right, that you actually want to provide enough value that you're not going to feel like you're bugging people. I think that's the thing that people worry about with emails. Like, I don't want to bug them. But if you're creating content and have a content strategy that's in place that's going to provide enough value to show up, and they'll be excited to see your email, I think that's where you should probably try to go. But I don't know. And yeah.
And I think it's important to think about, what's happening in your geographic location or with your target audience right now. Is there a bunch of blue-green algae happening and pets are getting sick? And if so, like, why not inform your clients about that?
Absolutely.
If there's, if you're in the hurricane area and, this hurricane is heading right towards you, why not reach out to your clients about what to do prior to that happening? So I do think, being specific
like
and
fire
relevant.
season, for example, like if a fire comes, you're not gonna have time to email them. So like fire season, provide value.
That's another example of like educating. The value of educating your clients. It's about more than just holiday safety, or there are a lot of other timely things that you should be thinking about based on your geographic location.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like, I guess kind of last thing that I would want to ask you, if you could do one thing that you see practices doing and like have them either stop or start something, what would that be? And why would that be when it comes to content in general?
Oh, good question. Let me think about this for a second. So for me as a writer, this isn't really necessarily like just about content marketing. It's more about just from a writer's perspective. Like, my pet peeve is when I see mistakes in grammar errors or typos in writing, or even just improper, like when writing is wrong. Like, there's so many people in this industry, and really probably everywhere, but who think that like veterinary medicine is a proper noun and it should be capitalized, and that's not the case. So that's another reason why I think it's valuable to have a copywriter, because your content is going to be error free, and it's going to be properly written. It drives me crazy when I see like things like that. And also inconsistency. Like, some practices say preventive medicine, some practices say preventative medicine. Some practices use healthcare as one word. Some practices use healthcare as two words. I would say none of those things are wrong, but it is wrong if you're going back and forth between the two different ways of doing things. So pick a style and be consistent with that voice and style.
That makes a lot of sense. And yeah, that's really cool. I think I really like watching your Instagram reels where you each go through like the pet peeve that you have, because it's like, oh, I need to focus on that. So I really love your content too, and I suggest everybody go check out your Instagram. It's at Rumpus Writing. And then where can people get in touch with you? I honestly think every practice that is doing well should hire you, because it's important to really define your brand voice and get your content all aligned, and like there's just so much value in that. So where can people go and find you at? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
You can go to our website, which is rumpuswriting.com. And I will say, all of our clients have all different kinds of objectives and things that they're trying to accomplish. And whether it's just, we want a job ad written, or we want, an ongoing relationship where, you're doing XYZ every month, we can do any of those things, and we can be pretty flexible. So whether you think what you're looking for is too small or too big, we've got a team of writers and editors that can handle it. So we have 6 full-time writers on our team, and then we have 7 or 8 freelancers that we use every month as well, depending on how many projects we have going on at the time. So
very cool.
And everyone on the full-time team except for me, is either a veterinarian or a veterinary technician. So we also have that medical knowledge, which I think is really important. A lot of people can go find veterinary content or find copywriters elsewhere, but it's not necessarily written by someone who knows the profession and the medical side of things as well. So we have that on our side.
That's really cool. I didn't realize that. And that is actually a massive massive benefit, because obviously you want to make sure you're putting out good info. So that's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brandon. It's been fun.